I came to bury sin.
Cursed spite that ever I was born to set it.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
This is the excellent foppery of the world. I worked with Harold Pinter. My first Broadway show was directed by him, and years later when I did the 20th anniversary production of Caretaker, he came to see it and help out and give notes, which he did with many of his shows, by the way. He was a very caring, wonderful man. And he had been working on Donald Wolfett's King Lear, and he talked about him as being the greatest Lear he had ever seen. And Wolfett was a big, oversized actor. I mean, a big voice and a big emotion and a real tyrant. And most of the roles he played besides Shakespeare that I've seen were pretty much that kind of guy. And when I worked on my first Lear, it was Morris Karnofsky. It was at UCLA at Schoenberg Hall. And I was working backstage at the time. It was a John Houseman production. And I loved Karnofsky in the part. It's said that that's a Jewish play that Shakespeare's written. It's a family tragedy, and he's the tyrant father. And he would do this stuff and these gestures, and I loved it. My theory of acting has to do with a continuum, which I believe came out of cave days. And the origins of speech came out of this need to express oneself through the grunts and the sounds that we've now accepted as words have absolutely solid basic foundations, visceral connections to original speech. And the idea that Shakespeare has invented a lot of words which stuck, which absolutely have become part of the language, indicates that he has a very, very firm connection with the beginnings of language, the origins of language. And there are times when I'm working on a part and I think I've discovered something. I'm so proud of this twist that I've found, and this sound, and this movement within the word and the language and the meaning. And after I've done it for a while, I love repeating. I really find things in the repetition. I will suddenly realize that I've heard this before. This twist in here that I thought I discovered, in fact, it was from a moment that I saw a movie when I was about 12, 15, and this guy did the reading this way, not of Shakespeare, of another thing completely. And I stole it without thinking. I absorbed it. I chewed on it, and it came out this way, unconsciously. And I don't know how much of that, I don't know how much ever I have actually created. I don't think it's important to analyze that, because when it does finally filter through this alembic, through what I am, it is mine. But in fact, it does connect me with that whole long line of actors and theaters and experiences that have been happening since Shakespeare wrote the first play he ever wrote. I really believe that, by the way. But the idea that when I do Lear, I've done it twice, and when I do it again, traces of Wolfett, even just from the descriptions of his performance, I never saw it, and of course certainly what Karnofsky did, are going to be there. And I don't regret that, because I'm an instinctive actor, and I'll allow whatever surfaces to come out. I trust that implicitly. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it's a real disaster, but that's where it comes from. And that's, I think, one of the real joys of Shakespeare, is that one of the many joys is that when you discover that you can absolutely rely on him, just stick with the words. He knows more than you do, and he's written this for you. That's another thing. It's very personal. He had you in mind when he wrote this. It's hard to conceive of that. But I've got to tell you, when I did Bottom, I said, he just wrote this for me. He had me in mind. Like, what an amazingly smart man he was. But I want to do Lear again, one more time. I want to climb the mountain again. When I was doing it in Boston, in the ART, after the show, an acquaintance I hadn't seen in years who had moved to Boston came backstage, and she started to say hello and explain how she felt, and she just burst into tears. And I said, did you see your father up there? And she said, I saw my mother. Speaking of universality, Queen Lear. But I was playing my father when I played it, and I think that speaks to a lot of people.